Okay, so am I recording? Enlightenment as an American is, I don't know, it's the same as anywhere else, but it is kind of weird because you can't, it's really interesting how in China, in India, these countries that have been around for thousands of years, like 5,000 years old, they've documented this stuff. They know about spiritual enlightenment. Many people have been like, my consciousness left my body and there was no time, and I realized that everything is an illusion, and it's all kind of just a gift for us to have the experience of life. And you can never die. And uh, then I got sucked back into my body, and now I just feel like, you know, like that. This stuff has happened. No one is. They're not all making up the same thing. And America is like 300 years old, and we're like, I don't know. Seems a little fishy. Seems weird. It's like I just this was it happened to me like 10 years ago. Again, mentioned in my other videos, I was always very interested in Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, all that stuff, right? So I'll just tell a story of what my experience was. I was walking in the woods with my dog in a state park, and I was meditating on a rock, looking over a lake, and I started to get these like chills, like these waves of energy through my body. And then there was a big gust of wind, and they almost kind of lined up. And then I got another wave of energy, and then there was another big gust of wind. And then, but I could also like see the wind on the water as it was coming, and it was very clear. And I had been meditating for like a good amount of time up until this point. Not that it really matters how much you meditate, but quick side note, I also found that when you're meditating and you're in like a very deep state of meditation and consciousness or like whatever, when you're in the woods, someone always comes and interrupts you. Like I would be off path in the woods in the most random spot, and like a group of teenagers would walk up to me out of nowhere and like interrupt my meditation, which is interesting. It makes me think like maybe that's why they would go out into the Himalayas and just try to make sure no one could disturb there. Because sometimes it's like you're almost about to have a breakthrough, and then there's something happens that snaps you out of your state of being. So I'm walking. This happened. I feel like I'm tuning into the synchronicity of the world, and I'm walking along a beach by the water, and then there's woods. It's almost like a doorway of woods because it's the tree line, and there's like this almost like an arch of an opening for me to go in. And I'm thinking about the big questions in life. I'm thinking like, what is reality like for God? And I was also starting to think, almost in like a anti-authoritarian, anti-authority way, like I don't like that I'm God's, like I'm like a puppet of God and only he gets to know, and I just have to be here, and like there's no way I can understand it. Like I don't know what's going on. Like what happened before I was born? What happens after I die? I was like, this is bullshit. Like I don't. It made me feel like I don't want to play. I feel like I'm just some pawn in his game. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Um, and so I'm like, well, what is it reality like for God? And I kept asking, kind of like, I kept being like, okay, but then what? But then what after that? And I found a rock wall, and I sat on the rock wall. And I'm asking, I'm like, okay, but then what? But then what after that? But then what? And I'm like rocking back and forth at this point. And a guy was walking down the path, and he saw me, and he looked like he saw a ghost. And then he turned around and walked the other way. And it didn't break me out of my meditation. I'm like, okay, but then what? But then what after that? And now my dog starts pawing at me and wincing, like very like aggressively. That didn't break me out of my meditation. I'm like, but okay, but then what? What after that? And all of a sudden, it was just like whoosh. And my consciousness was up out of my body, looking down at myself. And I was also looking up and at the same time. And my life didn't flash like before my eyes, but it was like I experienced my entire life in one moment. there was no time. Everything everything made sense because there were no questions that needed to be asked. And there, it also kind of looked like a solar eclipse, like when the moon is in front of the sun, like that thing of light was like above me. And I saw a couple of other things that I don't want to talk about right now, but you just have this full knowing and this full understanding and realization of like, oh, like this is all a gift, like this is all an illusion, but it's for us to have the experience of life. Like the fact we don't know what happened before we were born, the fact that we kind of like don't know what happens after we die, like that all kind of adds to the experience of life in a good way. It's almost like knowing certain things can almost be kind of a burden. And it's like you kind of like put yourself here and to erase that knowledge from your mind to just have the human experience. Like you don't need to be like bogged down or bothered with all that stuff. And so there, I could talk about this forever. It's hard to it's really hard to explain, and you really can't explain it. Like even Zen masters and people, they're like, it can't be fully explained in a way where you're then gonna understand it with your mind. Like the mind intellectually cannot understand it and put it in a box. It is an experience that you have that you can kind of like take information from and away, but it's really more about the experience and the state of being that you exist as, that you can then kind of take back into your body and integrate into your life. I remember thinking like I could keep going. Like I could keep going into like the void almost. And I thought I don't want to keep going because I don't want to leave my dog alone in the woods. And then I realized like if I keep going, there will be no dog and there will be no woods. And then I was like, whoosh. Then I was back down in my body. And it's I was just still, there were no thoughts, there was nothing happening. And it's like I am getting the chills talking about this, but it's like that happens and it's kind of dangerous. I feel like I'm like an uninitiated person. I don't, these things all they just happened from just being interested in just the right combination of like kind of giving up and surrendering, which I feel like this was. I was like provoking it a little bit by asking certain questions, but at the same time, part of me did just like give up and was like, I don't care anymore. Like, I don't want to play this stupid life game. Not in like, cry for help, like I don't want to live anymore. Not in that type of way. Just in the fact of like an apathetic way of like, I just like this is what is going on. Like what is going on in reality? Like where are we? What is going on? Like in that kind of way. And so it's one of those things that it's not one of those things. It's the thing. It is the thing. So that happens very like still in what you could maybe describe as weird for maybe years after this happens. And part of me like I knew I could never forget this, but I didn't want to operate my life from this perspective because once this happens you kind of have to like integrate it into your life in a way. But I wasn't ready to do that yet. And the weird thing is I kind of had a feeling that like in 10 years I would have to and I'd be forced to. And then like 10 years later the Kundalini stuff happens. Because I do think it's probably good to have a guide. If something like this happens to you, you should try to find somebody. Even though it's a path you walk alone, because after this happened, I probably should have then started to focus on or maybe expedite my like a Kundalini experience because they pair very well together. like the knowledge, like the knowledge that everything is an illusion, and this is all just kind of like a dream that you put yourself into and erased your memory on purpose, and that everything is literally all one. And it can be heavy stuff when you start to try to process it with your mind instead of just being like zen and existing with it. But then the kundalini, and the kundalini helps because it's almost like the enlightenment aspect of it is like the masculine version of awakening, and then the kundalini is the feminine version of awakening. And I remember, I think Buddha said something that was like, enlightenment is just like one leaf in the forest as far as like spiritual experiences you can have. Because when it happens, you think you're like, this is the pinnacle experience I can have. Like, this is it. And I think Buddha said something like, no, there's like a bunch of other stuff that you can experience and have happen. So that's cool. And yeah, it's I've tried to tell people about it a couple times, and then I'm like, all right. It's always really normally met with more of a concern than an intrigue. I'm like, yeah, like if you ever need to like talk to anyone, like you can always talk to me. I'm like, all right, never mind. You didn't understand this. They're like, what do you mean death is a gift? I'm like, never mind. But it's not something that you can explain to people, really, in a way, who aren't at least like intrigued or curious about it or on that path or have had that experience. So, enlightenment, wow, what an experience to have in life. I don't know. I don't know what's next. The other thing is like a lot of times this stuff happens and you're like I've had like these high level spiritual experiences. I feel like I should have more command over the universe and over my own world in a way than I do. But I don't. I sometimes feel like I'm like living life in reverse. I feel like people ask a lot of these bigger questions as they start to get older. They maybe start to find God or ask about God or think about the afterlife. Whereas like to me, I feel like I needed to know that first. Like I had to get that out of the way. So yeah, enlightenment, pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. Man, it's hard to talk about because it's not something you can like. You can't process it with the intellectual mind. It's just something you experience. Then you can try to describe it, but you're never gonna describe it in the right way. But it is like the ultimate truth. It's like that's who you are. That's what everything is. It's like we are just being. We are just existing. The consciousness is at the like 0 point. That is at the base of reality. It's like we live in a world of duality, black and white, male and female, up and down, the sun and the moon, love and fear. And we think, oh, is fear going to win or is love going to win? Is there going to be like, is the blackness going to take over forever when I die? But it's a collapse. We live in this world of duality. And when fear and love collapse onto each other, you have peace. And that is what is at the center of the universe, of all of reality. And from peace, you can always choose love. And it's like there really is this loving energy at the fabric, at the base of all reality, of all existence, of everything. And it will always be like that, and it's never going away. And we are pure, eternal consciousness created from love, where it's a beautiful thing. It's pretty cool. I'm glad that it's not like, I'm glad that's what's at the the fundamental base of reality. So feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and thank you for watching.